In 1740, South Carolina passed a law making it a crime to teach a black child to read or write. And yet, by the time those same children turned 15, many had already mastered a skilled craft so demanding it took white apprentices years to learn: forging iron, throwing 40-gallon jars, coiling baskets the very way their grandmothers had in Africa. They could not legally sign their names, but their hands could do things most grown men could not. Here is what was done with all that genius. The work was kept. It stands in museums, holds up mansions, sells for thousands today. The names of the children who made it were erased. The credit went to the master, the owner, the company, the anonymous craftsman. For 2 centuries, history admired the gate and forgot the boy who bent the iron. Number 6 on this list is the brilliant blue dye that built one of the South's great fortunes on knowledge that came straight from West Africa. And number 5 is a hairstyle so sophisticated that in the time of slavery, it could carry a secret message braided right into a child's swalp. These weren't chores. They were artistry, mastered young by children history pretended were only hands. So before we begin, take a second and subscribe, because this is our inheritance, and these names deserve to be spoken. Number 25, coiling a sweetgrass basket. On the Sea Islands, a Gullah child learned to coil baskets almost before she could write her name, sitting at her grandmother's knee, picking up the dropped strands until her own fingers found the rhythm. The craft came from West and Central Africa 300 years ago, and the fanner baskets our people coiled were the tools that winnowed the rice that made the low country rich. The world called them simple plantation goods. Today, a single sweetgrass basket sells for hundreds of dollars and sits in the Smithsonian. Our children mastered an African art form before they lost their baby teeth. Number 24, working iron at the forge. Many West Africans came to these shores already heirs to centuries of ironworking mastery, and that knowledge passed straight to their children. A boy was at the forge young, and by his mid-teens, he could read the color of hot metal and beat raw iron into the tools, hinges, and nails the whole Southern economy ran on. The skill was treated as the master's property, never the smith's gift. But African metallurgy was old and deep, long before this country existed. Our children turned fire and iron into a nation's backbone and got none of the credit. Number 23, bending iron into lace. Then there was the artistry above the craft, the ornamental wrought iron that makes Charleston and New Orleans famous, the gates and balconies that tourists photograph by the thousand, the hard truth those photos don't tell. Most of that ironwork was designed and forged by enslaved black hands and was not credited to them until the 1970s. A Charleston boy named Philip Simmons started his apprenticeship at 13, learning from a man born into slavery, and went on to forge 500 gates. His work and his name now in the Smithsonian. The iron was always ours. It just took the world 2 centuries to admit it. Number 22, throwing a 40-gallon jar. In the Edgefield clay pits of South Carolina, enslaved children learned to turn pottery on a wheel, and the masters among them threw alkaline glazed stoneware jars so enormous it took extraordinary strength and skill just to keep them from collapsing. Some held more than 40 gallons. They also shaped the haunting face jugs, with kaolin eyes and teeth, carrying West African spiritual meaning the buyers never understood. The work was called common crockery. Those same jars now command fortunes at auction. Our children were master ceramicists, throwing monuments out of mud while still half grown. Number 21, sewing a gown fit for a palace. A girl learned the needle early, and the gifted ones became artists in thread, drafting, cutting, and hand-stitching gowns of breathtaking precision. Elizabeth Keckley sewed so beautifully that she bought herself and her son out of slavery, then became personal dressmaker to the First Lady of the United States. The seamstress was treated as invisible, a pair of hands behind the gown, but her skill bought her freedom and dressed the White House. Our daughters turned a needle into a way out of bondage itself. Notice the pattern already taking shape. A basket, a gate, a jar, a gown, every one of them a thing of real beauty and real skill, and every one of them made by a child who was told by law and by custom that they were nobody. That is the cruelty and the wonder of it at the same time. The cruelty is the erasure. The wonder is that the genius poured out anyway, into clay, iron, and thread, because you cannot outlaw a gift, no matter how many laws you write. Our people made beauty under conditions designed to crush it. Let us keep going. Number 20, building furniture that would outlive everyone. Black cabinet makers, free and enslaved, built the fine furniture of the South, and a free man named Thomas Day ran the largest furniture shop in all of North Carolina. His work so prized that the state university and 2 governors commissioned it. These were hand-cut joints, fitted so tight they needed no nails, by craftsmen trained from boyhood. The furniture was admired. The maker's color was meant to be forgotten. But Thomas Day's pieces are treasured in museums to this day. Our people built heirlooms that outlasted the men who claimed to own them. Number 19, making brick from the bare earth. Long before they could vote or read, our children worked the brickyards, mixing clay by foot, packing the molds, firing the kilns. By their teens, they knew how to read a fire, so the brick came out hard and true. Those handmade bricks built the mansions, the churches, and the very walls that still stand across the South. The buildings are called landmarks. The children who made the bricks, nothing at all, but you can still run your hand along that brick. Our people shaped this country's foundation with their fingers in the mud. Number 18, laying the wall plumb and true. Making the brick was only half of it. Laying it was a craft of its own. Black masons learned to set a course dead level, turn a corner true, raise an arch that would carry weight for 200 years without a sag. By 15, a skilled young mason could lay a wall a builder would stake his name on. The mason's name went unrecorded. The owner's went on the cornerstone, yet the wall still stands straight after 2 centuries. Our people built this nation brick by brick, signed only with their labor. Number 17, raising a watertight barrel. Before cardboard and plastic, everything shipped and stored in barrels. And the cooper who made them was a master of invisible engineering. Our people shaped each curved stave by eye, drew them tight with hoops, and raised a cask so perfectly fitted it held water or whiskey without losing a drop. No glue, no nails. It was geometry done with a draw knife. The steel drum made the trade vanish. But a hand-coopered barrel is a marvel, prized again by artisans today. Our people built vessels that held a fortune, one stave at a time. Number 16, turning fiber into cloth. On the loom and at the spinning wheel, our people turned raw cotton and wool into the very cloth that clothed the plantation. A girl could card, spin, and weave by 15, keeping the tension even, working patterns from memory into yards of usable cloth. It was slow, skilled, unending work, treated as the lowest kind of labor. Yet hand-woven textiles are studied and collected as folk art now. Our people spun thread into cloth, and cloth into survival, and art the world only later learned to see. Stop and think about what it means that so many of these crafts are dying now. They didn't fade because they stopped working. A hand-coopered barrel still holds. A brick wall still stands. They faded because the factory came, and because the people who held the knowledge were never honored, never paid what it was worth, never recorded as masters. When you erase the teacher, the teaching dies with them. That is what was lost. And that is exactly why naming these crafts again and the children who carry them is its own small act of repair. Let us keep going. Number 15, piecing a quilt out of nothing. In a little bend of the Alabama River called G.E.'s Bend, the descendants of enslaved people pieced quilts out of worn work clothes and feed sacks and created bold, improvisational designs unlike anything in the history of American art. The skill passed mother to daughter for generations. Born of pure necessity in the cold, the world called it making do. Then those very quilts hung in the Whitney Museum, hailed by critics as some of the most miraculous modern art America has produced, and printed on United States postage stamps. Our grandmothers were abstract artists. They just called it keeping the children warm. Number 14, weaving a basket from a split oak. Apart from coastal sweetgrass, our people in the uplands mastered a tougher basketry, riving a white oak log into thin splits with a knife and a true eye, weaving them into field baskets strong enough to haul a harvest. A child learned to feel when a split was right. Cheap containers nearly killed the craft, but a hand-split oak basket lasts a lifetime, and collectors prize them now. Our people made tools that worked harder and lasted longer than anything you can buy off a shelf. Number 13, tying a net by hand. Along the coasts and rivers, our people fed whole communities with nets they knotted entirely by hand. Thousands of identical knots, spaced just so, weighted and hung to open into a perfect circle when thrown. A Gullah child learned to tie and cast beside the men until the motion lived in the wrists. It was mathematics done with twine and feel. Cheap machine netting pushed it aside, but hand-tied nets and the cast net are kept alive now as treasured heritage. Our people pulled a living from the water with knots their own fingers tied. Number 12, building a boat by hand. On the rivers and the sounds, black boat builders shaped dugout canoes and flat bateaux that carry people, rice, and cotton where no road went, and black watermen ran them with a knowledge of tide and current no chart could hold. The skill of shaping a hull that runs true was learned young on the water. The names of those builders rarely made any record. Our people built the boats and read the water the low country floated on. Number 11, making a pair of shoes from scratch. The shoemaker took a flat hide and a set of simple tools and built, by hand, a thing shaped to a human foot, cutting, lasting, and stitching leather into shoes that had to carry a person for years. Our people kept whole communities shod, and a skilled young cobbler could measure, cut, and stitch a sound pair before he was grown. The factory made shoes cheap, and the craft nearly disappeared, but handmade shoes are a luxury now. Our people built from raw leather the very thing that carried a community, mile by mile. Look at how wide this runs: clay and cloth, iron and oak, leather and water. There was almost no craft this country needed that black hands were not mastering, often before those hands were grown. We are taught to picture our ancestors only in the cotton field, bent over a single row, but they were also at the forge, the loom, the potter's wheel, skilled artisans holding up the entire material world of the South. The field was real, but it was never the whole story, and the whole story is so much prouder. Let us bring it home. Number 10, working leather into harness and saddle. Beyond shoes, our people were masters of all leather, tanning the raw hide, then cutting and stitching it into the harness, saddles and tack that every farm and every road depended on. A good set of harness had to fit perfectly and hold under strain for years, and the young hands that made it learned every stitch by heart. The work was essential, and the workers uncredited. Today, fine hand-stitched leather work is a costly craft. Our people made the gear that moved a country pulled by muscle and leather. Number 9, building a wheel that runs true. Ask any old craftsman, and he'll tell you the wagon wheel was the hardest woodwork there was, and black wheelwright mastered it, shaping the hub, fitting the spokes, bending the rim, shrinking a red-hot iron tire onto it so the whole thing pulled itself tight and ran perfectly round. Get one angle wrong and the wheel failed on the road. Our people got it right, young, by hand. The automobile ended the trade almost overnight. but the wheelwright skill is studied now as a near-lost art. Our people built the wheels that roll this nation west. Number 8, shaping tin into everything. The tinsmith turned flat sheets of metal into the everyday world. Cups, lanterns, candle molds, coffee pots, roofing, and gutters, cutting, folding, and seaming the tin into watertight shapes with nothing but hand tools and skill. Our people worked this trade everywhere, and a sharp young apprentice could turn out a sound vessel before 16. Cheap stamped goods made it obsolete, yet handworked tin is a valued craft once more. Our people shaped the objects that filled every kitchen and lit every room, and never got their names on one. Number 7, carving meaning into wood. Our people carved bowls and spoons, canes and figures for the spirit. Walking sticks worked with snakes and faces, carrying West African meaning across the ocean. A child whittled first for use, then for beauty, until a block of wood spoke. The carvings were dismissed as crude folk whittling. Now they hang in museums of American folk art, studied for the African memory carved right into them. Our people kept a whole visual language alive in wood when every other door was closed to them. Number 6, coaxing blue out of a green plant. This is the one I tease. Indigo built one of colonial Carolina's great fortunes, and turning a scrubby green plant into that deep, precious blue dye was a difficult, exacting art that came directly from the knowledge of enslaved West Africans who had been dyeing cloth that color for centuries. The timing of the fermenting and beating had to be perfect, and our people knew it in their hands. The fortune went to the planters. The knowledge was never credited to the Africans who carried it. Today, natural indigo is treasured by dyers worldwide. Our people made the blue that made men rich. We are near the top now, and the last few crafts are the most personal of all, worked not on iron or clay, but on the body, the head, and the holy ground itself. Because survival was never only about making goods to sell. It was about tending each other, carrying culture no master could confiscate, and leaving a mark that would outlast the lie that we were never here. These final crafts are the ones our people kept closest. Let us finish strong. Number 5, braiding a map into a child's hair. This is the one I promised you. Cornrowing is real geometry worked on the scalp, precise, patient, beautiful, taught to children by other children. But across the world of slavery, those braids carried more than style. In the African diaspora, oral tradition holds the patterns could hide messages, even routes to freedom, plaited in plain sight where no overseer thought to look. A hairstyle became a kind of secret writing. The world saw only doing hair. Now cornrows are recognized as the sophisticated cultural art they always were. Our people turned a child's braids into beauty, into heritage, and sometimes into a map. Number 4, mastering the barber's chair. For black men shut out of nearly every other path, the barber's trade was something rare, a skilled craft that could be owned. The barber learned the razor and the shears young, in the best-built shops that became pillars of the community. Among the few independent black businesses the era allowed, the work was treated as servants' work, but that chair built black wealth, black gathering places, and black independence when almost nothing else could. The barbershop remains a cornerstone of our communities. Our people turned a razor and shears into one of the first doors to freedom. Number 3, spreading the ceilings of mansions. Look up inside the grand old houses of the South, at the smooth ceilings, the ornate medallions, the crisp cornices, and you are very often looking at the work of black plasterers. It was a punishing, skilled craft, mixing the plaster, working fast before it set, casting ornaments so fine it looked carved. Young hands learned to spread a ceiling glass smooth. The houses are called architectural treasures. The plasterers are unnamed, but the ceilings are the proof, still flawless overhead. Our people finished the finest rooms in the South, then weren't allowed to be guests in them. Number 2, cutting stone that will never move. With hammer and chisel, our people shaped stone, squaring the foundation blocks, raising dry stone walls that have not shifted in 2 centuries, and carving the very gravestones that mark the dead. By his teens, a skilled young mason could split and dress a stone to fit so well it needed no mortar at all. The walls are admired, the hands that cut them are forgotten. Yet the stone keeps the record. It can't help but keep. It endures. Our people laid foundations that still bear weight and carved markers for graves history tried to leave unmarked. Number 1, carving your own name into the work. Here is the deepest craft of all, and the one that ties every other together. In Edgefield, South Carolina, an enslaved potter known as Dave threw some of the largest, finest stoneware jars in American history. And then he did something almost unthinkable. In a state where teaching him to read was a crime, he signed his name on his pots. He dated them. He inscribed them with original lines of his own poetry, wit, faith, and sorrow, in clay for the world to read. Every signature was a crime, and every signature was a man saying, "I was here. I made this. I am not your anonymous hands." History tried to erase the name of every maker on this list, but Dave wrote his into the clay, and the clay outlasted the whole cruel system. His jars now sit in the Smithsonian, his words still speaking 170 years later. That is the craft beneath all the crafts, the refusal to be erased. Our people signed their genius in iron and thread and clay and stone, and we are here today reading the signature. So here's my challenge to you, and it's a gentle one. Don't try to learn all 25. Just pick up one thread this week. Try one real craft, a stitch, a carving, a braid done with your own 2 hands. Or walk through an old building and ask who really laid that brick, spread that ceiling, forged that gate, and ask the oldest person in your family what they could make from scratch, and write it down before it goes quiet. I'll be honest with you. The first time I learned that Dave the Potter signed his jars, that a man forbidden to read wrote poetry into clay so it would outlast everyone who owned him, I had to sit down. Because that is the whole story, isn't it? They tried to erase us, and the work survived to say our names anyway. So tell me in the comments, what did your people make with their hands?